welcome back to another episode. Thank you for joining in today. Solo episode, just me and myself. Um, Excuse my voice. We had fights last night, and I promised myself every single time my guys fight that I'm not going to scream, I'm not going to scream, I'm not going to scream. And every single day I wake up with no voice. So if I sound soft today, it is because my voice is shattered. But nevertheless, so in the past 2 weeks, we've had two massive um, events, right? We had the return of Conor McGregor, and we had Dricus du Plessis return against Kamaru Usman. And it got me thinking less about like where we are currently in MMA and more about how we develop the next generation. You know, Conor comes back after 5 years, and after a minute the fight's over, and he apparently supposedly destroyed his knee. Dricus comes back and fights one of the greatest welterweights of all time, you could say, and absolutely mauls him. And then I look at amateur MMA in South Africa, and I start questioning myself. I start thinking, are we developing athletes in the right way? You know, if you look at like global MMA, and you look at UFC, which is the benchmark for of UFC of MMA, and then we start thinking like, how do we develop fighters, young fighters, amateurs, to get to that kind of level without it being like, oh, this one guy did it, or this one guy did it, or that one guy did it, to a point where we have a generation of people doing it instead of just like the one exception here and the other exception here. So yeah, I mean, today I would like to talk about fights, but also want to talk about something that I think we need to have a serious conversation about, and that is amateur MMA. Like I said, I was at fights last night. It was amateur fights. You know, I had five guys fighting. We got 4 wins, one loss, which was a catastrophic robbery. But that's a whole topic on its own, um, which we're definitely going to get into, as everyone knows I was not happy about it. But I was happy about all the other performances. We won two additional amateur titles. That brings, I think, our team up to like 10 titles in the last year, just at the amateur level. But you know, still very proud of the guys. It's a big achievement, and it's a good starting point. Now that they've got more serious events to compete at. But going back to the Conor McGregor fight, because obviously I haven't spoken since his fight. You know, what did we learn from that fight, right? Because it was so short, and like we could like, it's easy to just say like, oh, Conor McGregor's washed, or like, oh, he looks bad or whatever. Like, what can we really take from that fight? I think personally, it's okay. There's a few things. Obviously, 5 years away is a very long time, right? Now, how he spent that 5 years, we don't know. I mean, we do know. He was, on the Peruvian marching powder and, you know, blasting gear and just going hard in the paint, enjoying his life with all of his money. So we know he wasn't like staying sharp in the gym, testing out those joints on like um, on some of those more explosive movements, like he tried to do against Max. We know he wasn't doing all of that. Maybe he was training, but training at a high level for competition and just training are two very, very different things. And so we don't know what he was doing in the last 5 years. You know, what could we really judge from the outside? Just looking, he looked like an old fighter. You know, he looked weathered. He looked like he had been living a rough life. Um, it looked it was sad. It was hard to sort of see him, especially after the fight, because you think of like the last time that you saw him compete, and he was like sort of in his prime, you know. And you look at him now, and it's like you can't help but feel sad, uh, seeing the two in contrast, you know. I mean, it's just, you can be away for 5 years and train, but you cannot simulate 5 years of not fighting. It's just not fighting for 5 years. I know personally, like I've had I've had two. She's COVID, put me out for a year, and then I only fought again at the end of the following year because of all that other shit. So yeah, I had a 2 year stint, and then injuries put me out for another 2 years. So I've had these little breaks too, and I know how difficult it is to not come back and fight. Like not even talking about a UFC main event, you know, like that's insane. And the pressure and everything that comes. You could kind of see it like everything up until the fight, but then when he was walking out, you kind of see that it wasn't the same Conor McGregor. And I think that moment of walking out and like being like, holy shit, I'm back. Your first fight back in 5 years is the main event. Like the biggest fight card, the biggest fight event of the year for sure. Like in terms of um, anticipation and like people wanting to see the event. I mean, it was massive. It's Conor McGregor, and so I think like walking out and then like experiencing that after 5 years away must have been daunting, like to anyone. That would have been really tough for anybody, you know. And then like at some point, like your body will make the decision for you. You know, I mean, he's 38 years old. I mean, the last time that he was in the UFC octagon, he was below 35. You know, so it's like also we got to take into account that like the last fight that he had in the UFC was what weight was he fighting? I can't remember. Oh, it was a light. He was fighting lightweight. So now you got to understand, like he's moved up to like he's up at the welterweight, and he's trying to move the same way as he did when he was a lightweight and a featherweight. It's just not the same, especially when you haven't been active and you haven't been testing out all these things. Like, who knows how long this training camp was? Maybe it was 10 weeks, but before that, what was he doing? You know, was he doing all that shit that he tried to like jumping roundhouse kicks? Like, was he doing that? And was he doing that with like a bunch of nerves, adrenaline? Like, was he doing all those things? Um, we don't know, you know. And it's for his type of like fighting style, that high fast twitch, really explosive style. Like you have to stay conditioned to doing that. You know, if he was like Max Holloway, he was like more of a volume, like endurance fighter, probably wouldn't have made as much of a difference. You know, he probably wouldn't have suffered this injury because just based on his style, he probably wouldn't have done anything like that that would force him into this injury. You know, and I know there's a lot of speculation of like, oh, was he injured going in? No, I don't think he was at all. I don't think he was. I think like all fighters have nickels when they're going into fights, but did he have a torn MCL going into a fight? No, I don't believe so. I don't think he did, and I think that's just speculative. I don't think that's. I think everyone talks about when he was taking off his shoes and he like tripped up. Bro, I've done that. So I never ACL, an ACL or MCL injury when I was when that happened to me. Um, you know, like sometimes you just fucking stumble, and I think being in that crazy environment made him like a little bit less coordinated than what he should have been. Um, and I mean, you can watch the slow mo video of how he landed. You can like, I mean, I'm not sports doctor, but it looked like you could see when he landed that his knee like moved, and you could see the ligaments on the side under stress. You know, it was for a moment there, for a fucking moment, we were back. We were, we were so back, baby. I remember I was sitting and watching. Max walked out, and you know it's Max. So like, I love Max. I love Max. He's one of my favorite fighters. But then it goes quiet, and you hear Sinead O'Connor. Is it Sinead O'Connor? Start singing the Foggy Dew, and my God, I was right back to like 2011 or 2012. I was right back. I was like, fucking absolute cinema. This is it. We're back. And then I got to look at him, and I was like, hey, man doesn't look man doesn't look as good as he could. Um, and then obviously the results. I was so fucking pissed that I had to with that. It was like on Sundays is one of the only days that I don't have an alarm set and I don't have to like wake up or anything. And this motherfucker made me set an alarm, and I woke up and that happened. I was I was pissed. I was pissed. Um, but is what it is. I hope it's not too much of an injury for him. And I would like to see him back, man. I want to see more. I would like to see him come back. I think like he should look, regardless of who he fights, doesn't matter. He doesn't have to fight Max Holloway. He can fight anyone. We're still gonna watch. I think he should get back in with someone that's not Max Holloway. That would be my opinion. That would be Max wants to run it back, obviously, because he's thinking about making bank. He kind of made 30 million for a minute of work. I mean, unbelievable. So I definitely think I would. I mean, I would love to see him come back, and I would like to see if anything that if he can maybe just turn it around and at least give us, if he had just like a good round and he got beaten and he got like fucked up, at least we would have seen something from him, And that's kind of like what I feel like we missed out on, is like just to see something. But yeah, here we are. We live and we learn, eh? We carry on. It's an unpredictable sport. Now, Dricus versus Usman was crazy. The improvements that you saw from Dricus. Now, everyone discounts Usman because they're like, oh, he lost three in a row, and then he just beat Buckley, and now he's fighting him. It's like he's washed. Yeah. First of all, Usman has never been finished, right? He fought, except for Leon Edwards, but that's the only. And in a fight that he was absolutely dominating, like dominating Edwards, and he got caught with a head kick. Now, there's no such thing as a lucky shot. There's no such thing. But he just got clipped. But he was fucking on his way to winning a unanimous decision. The second fight, I think mentally he wasn't in it because he just got carried by that guy, and he went and he lost. So that I would count as like yeah, lost. Then the other fights he lost was to fucking Hamza Chimaev on like 10 days notice at a higher division, and he took him to decision. And I believe if there were two more rounds there, it would have been a little more ugly for Hamza. So you think of that and you're like, fuck. So he lost to Leon Edwards by decision. He got KO'd by him. Yeah, he got clipped, whatever. That happens. And then he lost to fucking Hamza Chimaev. Then he fights a guy who's in the top 10, beats him convincingly. And everyone's like, oh, Usman's washed. It's like, no, uh, definitely not. Like, definitely not. So, like, everyone that discounted Usman going to this fight, I was like, hey, bro, you gotta give the man some respect. Now, the improvements that I saw from Dricus were crazy. Like, we gotta stop this conversation of like, oh, he's awkward, he's this. He looked like a clinical like technician in that fight. It looked like he had studied everything that Usman could possibly do, and he had an answer. Like it's such a lazy narrative to be like, oh, Dricus wins like this. Even I was like, the way that Dricus will win is through scrambles and chaotic exchanges, but it wasn't like that at all. He looked like he had a precise plan. He used it perfectly, and he just beat the brakes off of Usman. Like he beat him. At some point, if someone keeps beating elite fighters, calling him like awkward, like just stops being analysis. You know, his pressure was crazy. His high kicks were unbelievable. That left high kick was perfect. Um, Kept breaking Usman's rhythm. I mean, he had him fucking hurt, like on chicken legs for a couple of times, which we haven't seen happen to Usman very often, which is crazy. I mean, the sheer size difference between Dricus and Usman was like, like Dricus could be a light heavyweight, like he could be a light heavyweight. He's a massive man. He's a big guy. Um, and you can just see the difference between a big welterweight and a big middleweight. Like it's a stark difference, And I think as we start going up in the weight, you start seeing that be more evident. Like if you look at Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane is a big motherfucker, dude, and like he's lean. Like he's not like Alex Pereira look like a chubby middleweight or like a chubby light heavyweight, and Cyril Gane was like lean, fast, explosive, and like that's the difference. Like when you are a true heavyweight, just like Dricus, like a true middleweight, like a big ass middleweight versus like a big lightweight a big welterweight that just moves up. It's like you can see why, Um, yeah, what's next? What's next now? Like does Dricus get the title shot against Strickland for the third time? Does he have a rematch with Hamzat? Like what happens now? Interesting. It's interesting to like see because I think who's the guy that they said is gonna I can't remember that. I see that they might already have an opponent for Strickland lined up. Um, and so hopefully Dricus gets the winner between that fight. But I would like to see him run it back with Hamzat. I would like to see it. I would like to see him run it back and take the same approach that he did in preparation for this Usman fight and use it in preparation for the Hamzat fight. And I think we'll see a different fight. I think not like he's definitely made some changes, and it was evident. I mean, like, and for Usman, it's like, is it decline or is it circumstance? Like, look, he's 39. He's 39 years old. Yeah, at that at that weight category, like welterweight, middleweight, that is getting on in age. Now, I think that he lost the fight because of age, because of injury. No, I think Dricus was better than him on the night, and he was fucking fighting a much bigger man. He was fighting a guy double his size and a guy who was just better on the night. Had an answer for everything he did. So I wouldn't say that he lost because of age or because of decline, but I do think he is definitely on the back end of the career. I mean, 39 years old is not you're not a young guy anymore. Um, Now, if he was a heavyweight, maybe. But at that weight, guys are still fast and explosive, and cardio does come into things. Like he didn't look like he was through gas, but cardio definitely does add up on you when you're fighting at lighter weights. Not that middleweight's a lightweight, but you know what I mean. It's just a, it's just a, yeah. It's not a young man's sport. I mean, not an old man's sport. This is a young man's sport. I think between 28 and 35 is like your prime time, and everything after that, like unless you're a heavyweight, can slowly start to decline. So that's just my opinion. That's why, like, I'm out of MMA. I'm 35 years old. I set myself the limit of 35. The longest I'll stay till I fought. You know, I retired when I was 34, and that's that. Um, but yeah, thinking back and watching those two fights kind of brings me back to what I really wanted to talk about today, which is, you know, the state of like amateur development, especially like in South Africa. Like at the top, the sport has evolved massively, and at some level, at the bottom with amateur development, it is definitely growing um, in the recent years. But I just don't think that the evolution is working at the same pace. Like if you look at how it's evolving in the UFC, you see the skill evolvement in the UFC and how like different it is to like 5 years ago or 2 years ago versus amateur development. I think the top developments or the high level developments is moving at a much faster rate than the lower level development, um, which is concerning. Which should be the other way around. I don't know. I don't know if that's just my opinion, if that's a shared opinion, but yeah, I don't know. So in South Africa, right? Let's establish what's actually happening in South Africa. we have martial arts MMA South Africa, which is the governing body, and they are affiliated with IMMAF, or whatever, however you want to say it. And they run like a domestic pathway into national selection and IMMAF international competition, etc., etc. Now, 2026 South African Nationals reportedly had 178 athletes, with national team selection feeding into the Youth Worlds, Junior and Senior Worlds. Now, South Africa took 2 gold and 2 silver medals at the 2026 African Championships. So we are producing talent. We are definitely producing talent. The question is whether the system is extracting as much talent as we can possibly get. Now, that's a very different question to, do we have talent? It's like, yes, it's very evident. I go to every amateur event that there is locally. I was at the Nationals this year with my guys. So, yes, there's a lot of talent. Are we extracting that talent to the best of our abilities? That's a very different question. I guess we have to think about, like, what is amateur MMA actually for? Is it to find the best amateurs? Or is it to develop the best future professionals? Now, those are not the same thing at all, right? And I do think, in my opinion, that the IMMAF route, or the IMMAF pathway, is the best way to find the best amateurs, for sure. By a long shot, it is a great way to find the best amateurs. But does it find the best future professionals? That I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that. I don't know if I believe that is a reality. I don't think that. I don't think that it is the best path or the best sort of structure to develop to becoming a good professional. That's just my opinion. Obviously, that's my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Um, but I just don't know if it is a realistic um, a realistic structure that will develop people into becoming good professionals, right? Um, there's a couple things. There's a couple things that I think that, like, don't benefit becoming a professional, right? First of all, fighting 3-minute rounds. Okay, I'm trying to think of, like, why logically you would make amateurs that you want to turn pros fight times that don't reflect what you would do as a pro. In amateur boxing, the guys fight 3-minute rounds. In professional boxing, they fight 3-minute rounds. That makes total sense. That makes total sense. It doesn't make any other sense. It doesn't make sense to do it otherwise. Like, what is the safety or the risk of making them fight 5 rounds, 5-minute rounds? Doesn't make sense. So that's the first thing I would change. It's like, okay, why we're not fighting 3-minute rounds unless you're like a youth, maybe youth or juniors who fight 3-minute rounds. But it should be a 5-minute round, 3 5-minute rounds, or 5 5-minute rounds for titles. Like, let's prepare, because I'll tell you now, those extra 2 minutes in a real fight make a huge difference. That is a big, big one. The second thing that I would change, fighting with shin pads in an MMA fight, right? Now, I've seen internationally that other amateur systems let guys fight with no shin pads and just with puffy gloves, right? So, like, does success at IMMAF produce better professional fighters? Or is IMMAF simply identifying athletes who are likely to become good professionals anyway, right? Like, that's that seems like a pretty good question. Yeah, so I mean, like if we just look at IMMAF and then local development systems, right? It's not really IMMAF rules or local rules, because even IMMAF itself says that national member federations can use their own domestic rule sets. IMMAF encourages standardization, but member countries aren't forced to use IMMAF rules domestically. IMMAF rules become mandatory for its international championships, right? So how much should a country standardize internationally and how much should it customize locally, right? Because like I was saying, I've seen amateur MMA fights where guys are fighting with the puffy MMA gloves, the amateur gloves, and no shin pads, which to me seems like and 5 minute rounds, which seems like a much better segue into going into professional, right? Like just the grappling alone with shin pads is very difficult. Also, understanding that if you throw a kick and it gets checked, that shit's gonna hurt. Um, you know, if you don't want to block, if you don't want to check any kicks on a calf kick, 2 or 3 of those suckers and you're gonna be limping. It's I I I I think 5 minute rounds, no shin pads when you fight. I think keeping the elbows and the knees to the head off, absolutely. Amateurs don't need to get cut and get stitches and get like bad damage to their face. I don't think that's necessary, right? But fighting with shin pads and fighting 3 minute rounds makes no sense if you want to develop pros. Now, if you want to just develop amateurs and become the Olympics of MMA, then that's a different story. But to me, that doesn't seem, those are two completely separate goals. And like however you want to treat like youth or junior, whatever, that's a different story. Because that's a whole different category. But for senior adult amateur fighters, they should be fighting as close to professional as safely possible. And that includes, by the way, weigh-ins. Now, here in South Africa, they make these kids weigh in on the day of the fight, right? Now, they say, oh, it's to prevent weight cutting. It's to prevent this and that. I will tell you right now that every single one of those amateurs that weighed in for the senior fight cut weight. Every single one. All of my guys cut weight. They all cut weight. They were all dehydrated when they stood on the scale. And then they had to rehydrate to fight again in the night. Now, every single one of the people that were weighing in, that were fighting last night, I know for a fact all cut weight to make weight. Now, whether you want to argue and say, oh, they would have cut more, they would have. You're preparing these guys to fight professional where they will weigh in the day before, right? So you're preparing these guys to become pros where they are going to face guys that are going to cut big weight and be massive on the night. You are preparing them to have unrealistic expectations or prepare them to have their first fight as a pro, cutting weight to a weight they've never cut to before. So you got a guy who naturally walks around 73 kilograms. He fights at 70 as an amateur because it's same day weigh-ins. Now he thinks he's going to go fight a pro lightweight fight at 70 kgs because that's the weight that he's always fought at. And you're going to fight a guy like my fighter, Jason McKay, who is a fucking monster of a lightweight, who's cutting, walking around in the 80s, cutting weight, making weight. He's going to be 80 kilograms on the night when he fights you, boy. You know what I'm saying? And when he hits you, you're going to feel it. Or the other alternative is like, okay, cool. Now for your first pro fight, we're gonna now do your first real weight cut. We're gonna cut weight now down to fucking a division you've never fought at before. It doesn't make it makes no sense. Weight cutting is part of the sport. Whether I like it, which I don't, or whether I like it, it doesn't matter. It is part of the sport and it's not gonna go away. Same as in boxing, same as in kickboxing, same as in MMA, same as in wrestling. The only time I can understand doing same-day weigh-ins is for national championships where guys are fighting multiple times, so they have to weigh in each day to make sure they're not like overweight. And for international championships, if they want to do it, if you want to go, and fight for worlds, go and weigh in every day. Perfect. But for local fights where we're trying to develop guys to become pros, let's treat them like pros where it's safe, right? Now, how safe they cut weight is up to the doctor. The pre-medical check and the medical exams they do during the years is to make sure that they're healthy. The other thing is the onus is on the athletes and the coach to make sure that they're not cutting too much weight. I mean, look, I've cut weight so many times and I've cut lots of guys' weight. I currently am helping people cut weight. If you know how to cut weight, you can make it as safe as possible. Now, do I think the guy who walks around at 90 kilograms should cut to 66? Of course not. That's just stupid. That's just stupid. So it's going to come down to like individual responsibility, not saying, hey, let's just make the weigh-ins on the same day and make these kids cut weight anyway, because they're going to do it. Everyone's going to do it. They're going to cut weight. They all are cutting weight. Every single one of them is doing it. So you're actually risking them more by making them cut weight and dehydrate on the same day that they're going to fight. It's insane. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. That is like those three things, same day weigh-ins, fighting in suction pads, and fighting 3-minute rounds are insane to me. That it just doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense to me. You know, and then also just like it just doesn't make any sense. I think there should be some sort of like hybrid rule set where it's like, okay, for this subcategory of fighters, let's say you've had less than 3 fights. Okay, cool. You have to fight 3-minute rounds. You have to wear suction pads, and you have to weigh the same day. Okay, cool, perfect. Because you guys are like really like beginner, you know. But after that, when you move up to like 3 to 10 fights, you know, there should be some slow like introduction of some professional rules. So maybe you still, I don't know, keep them at 3 minutes, or I don't know. But the way it is now, it just does not prepare them for being pros. It just doesn't. Like, I personally watch some pros fight that look like fucking amateurs still. They look like amateur fighters. They do not look like professional fighters. You can see by the way that they warm up. You can see by the way that they cut their weights. You can just see that they have no idea what they're doing because they've never had to do it. And so, or if the way that they did it when they were fighting amateurs under these rule sets, it worked because they were cutting like a little bit of weight and because they just had to kind of make it work, you know? But then when you have like a real weight cut where you're actually cutting weight now to like the division you should be fighting, and now you're going to apply the same techniques you did when you weren't really cutting weight, it's just not going to work. And that's actually the problem, you know? Like, there has to be something that actually develops people into becoming pros, because what happens is now these guys fight, I don't know, have 8 amateur fights, right? They've never experienced what it really feels like to fight as a pro. They've had 8 fights, which is not a lot of fights. And they're like, oh, cool, I'm ready to go pro. So they go pro, and they realize, oh, fuck, this is a whole different sport now. It's not the same sport that I've had 8 fights in. It's 2 extra rounds, 2 extra minutes per round, right? So that's, in a non-title fight, that's 6 extra minutes of fight. It's an entire round that you're going to have extra to fight. And in a title fight, it's even more. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. And then, now you're fighting without shin pads. It's the first time you're going to take a real fucking kick. You know? Because in sparring, obviously, you're not kicking without shin pads because, like, you don't want to get injured. So it's like, now it's the first time that you're going to take a real kick without shin pads is in your first fucking pro fight. Madness. Insane. And then cutting weight. You're going to learn how to cut weight now for the most important fights of your actual career, not your amateur career, the first most important fights of your actual career is the first time you're going to do a real weight cut. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense to me. It makes no fucking sense. I mean, so I'm going to talk about last night. So last night I had 5 guys fighting. 4 wins, 1 controversial, very poor decision, which I believe. Now, my guy, in my opinion, the way I scored the fight, 1 rounds 1, 2, 4, and 5. That's the way I scored it from the corner, being as objective. If I had to be as generous as possible, maybe, just maybe, I would give him the other guy 3 and 4. So I would give him 2 rounds if I'm being generous. But outright, 3 rounds to two for my fighter, if I'm being as generous as possible, right? One of the judges scored it 3 rounds to two for that other guy, and one of the judges scored it 4 rounds to one to the other guy. They gave it a unanimous decision to the other guy. Now, I don't want to throw shade on anybody. I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody here, right? But at some point we have to say, okay, guys, listen. I spoke to one of the officials afterwards, and I was saying, I think you guys are listening to the crowd, not actually watching the fight. And his words were, yes, of course, there is always that for any referee, any judge. There's going to be that. It's like playing on fighting on home soil. And I'm like, but hang on, that in itself is a bias. That's bias. That's you not judging the fight then. If every single time a fighter throws a punch and the crowd cheers because he has a lot of supporters there, you're gonna think, oh, geez, that must have been a good shot. But watch the fight. Don't listen to the fight. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I had my guy fights. He lost the decision, which I thought was insane, which I'm gonna have reviewed because it's insane. I had a guy fight straight after that. I thought his fight was much closer than my other guy's fight. Even though I thought he won, I thought it was a little bit closer. You know, a judge scored that round 4 rounds to one for my guy. Now, I'm not saying I know all the judging criteria, and I know these guys do courses and stuff. Like you do a judging course, um, under IMMAF rules. Um, I'm not saying that like I know more than that, right? But just purely as someone that has had a lot of fights and has watched a lot of fights and been to a lot of fights and cornered a lot of fights and trained with a lot of professional fighters and been to a lot of professional fighting um, corners, been in the corners of professional fights, trained with countless other world level, elite level professional fighters. I think just obviously, like, there is, of course, I'm his coach, so there's going to be bias, but as unbiased as I could possibly be, I think that my ability to see who's winning a fight there should be a little bit of weight in that, regardless of how many courses you've done. You know what I mean? I just think I just think that bias is a real thing. It is a real thing, and we see it in all sports, and whether anyone wants to deny or whatever with that, whether anyone wants to deny that, it is a reality of sports, and it is a reality, especially of fighting, that there's going to be bias. There's going to be bias from the crowd's reaction to um, what certain judges think scores, or you know, there's going to be lots. There's going to be lots of those types of things. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is all just me talking about what happened last night. But you know, for me, there needs to be like a change in how we do these things, because you know, at the end of the day, amateur fighting is just about experience. So, like, as much as it's annoying that that result happened, I chalk it up to experience, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to develop my fighters to become pros, not to become the best amateurs, or to win the most amateur belts. Like, I don't like that. I don't care, you know. Um, Even my two guys that shared gold for nationals, South African nationals, we did it just to get them fights. It wasn't even about winning golds. Everyone was like, "Oh, they're gonna go to worlds." I'm like, "No, like, we don't care about doing that. We're trying to develop the best pros, or the best amateurs, or the develop amateurs that can become the best pros. Like, doing all this other stuff, like getting like medal, like, doesn't matter. The only thing that is going to matter is how good you are before you turn pro. how much experience you have. So as pissed off as I am, but I still chalk it up to just good experience. But there needs to be something done where we actually develop these guys to becoming pros. Like there has to be something else. There has to be something else. We can't just all just take this copy paste thing from IMMAF and be like, oh, we're just gonna apply this to everything. It's like, but they are doing their thing, right? Which is their event and their championships, right? Let's apply that for that. But here, let's focus on developing guys that want to become pros. And if they want to do IMMAF, then yes, cool, we can push them into that thing. And then when they get there, they have to follow those set of rules. That's just my opinion. You know, everyone's going to have their opinion about that. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discourse because of this. And I don't care. So that's just my opinion. And I think like if I were in charge today, this very second, that's exactly how I would run it. 5-minute rounds, take away the suction pads, allow the guys to weigh in the day before and properly rehydrate for the next day. Make sure that you do all the relevant medical checks. Make sure the guys are properly taken care of. No problems. All good, which they already are doing. They make the guys do annual medical exams, which I think is amazing. There's a person that checks them before every fight, straight after every fight. The guys are being checked. So it's like, like as long as that's happening, then it's like weight cutting is part of the sport. And guess what? The same sanctioning body is gonna be there when you fight as a pro, and they are gonna allow you to cut weight when you become a pro. It's like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about that. But I want to do something new for this episode, and hopefully for some more episodes. I'm just gonna give a couple like sort of hot takes. um, so 3 things. What does everyone see? What do I see from the corner? And what I would do on Monday, right? So what everyone sees right now, okay? What everyone sees now on the amateur level, because that is the actual topic I want to talk about. What everyone sees at the amateur level is like, oh, we need more amateur events. True, we do need more amateur events. I don't think that's the limiting factor right now, okay? From my corner, from my perspective, more fights doesn't automatically equal better development, because you can go for 100 walks, and you can go for 100 little cycles on your bike. That doesn't mean you're gonna fucking be able to complete an Ironman. You know what I'm saying? Like the two don't correlate. You know what I mean? Going for a brisk walk up Lion's Head is not the same as running the fucking 2 oceans. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same thing. It's just not the same thing. It's the same thing as fighting a 3-minute round with sock shin pads and no weight cutting. It's not the same as when you now become a pro and now you've got guys that are cutting weight that are massive, hitting you with bone on bone shots, and it's a 5-minute round. It's just not the same. It's not the same sport anymore. So that's my perspective. And then what I would do if I was in charge on Monday would be to implement those types of rule sets and have a structured, tiered system of, okay, if you're under 3 fights, you have to fight these rules. If you move on from there, you have to fight these set of rules. And then once you pass 5 fights, and now you're going to start looking to build into like experienced amateur and potentially become a pro. Now we're going to set you up into a position where now you can actually fight as a pro. Basically as close to pro as possible without being a professional, right? The only difference between being an amateur and a pro in terms of like the reality is you get paid for it. If you're not getting paid, you're an amateur, Guys that are competing at the fucking Olympics for wrestling are like the best, they are the best wrestlers on the planet. They don't get paid to wrestle. It's amateur. That's the only difference between them and the guys competing at RAF who are getting paid to wrestle. That's the difference. But it's the same group of people. So like We need to just like start like thinking of it differently, you know. And yeah, I just think like we gotta think of us first. That's the thing. It's like the South African MMA scene needs to think of the South Africans first. How do we develop our guys first? Not how do we pander to an international body? How do we get better? How do we develop the best guys? How do we make more Dricuses? How do we do that? We have to have a system to do that. IMMAF isn't the one. I don't think that system is the one. There, this is a great stat here. There is a 12% UFC conversion rate from people that people that go to IMMAF that go into the UFC. It's a 12% conversion rate. Like that's just not to me. That is not a. It's not a. It's just not a high. It's just not a high percentage conversion rate, right? It's just it doesn't make sense to me. So there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to drive that up. Um, and I think it starts at obviously the amateur level, the grassroots level, and, because what actually makes a world class fighter? It's not talent. It could be a bit of coaching. It could be a bit of talent. Is it competition? Is it infrastructure? Is it money? Or is it the development system that connects it all together? You know, you need to have a system that can, you know, be the perfect environment for a guy with talent, the perfect environment for great coaching, the perfect environment for elite competition. You know, we don't have a talent problem. I've never ever believed that. It's whether or not we can build a good enough system that you don't need to be exceptional or just have this talent to be able to succeed. You can succeed in spite of it. That's what we need. That's what we need. You know? Dricus is a once in a generation type talent, once in a generation type fighter. He could have been anywhere in the world. He would have gone to where he is ultimately gone. Right? How do we make it so that we're not the exception? We become the rule. You look at a system. You look at the Russian system. Their system develops the best fighters. Same with the American system. Their amateurs fight as if they were as if they're pros. They just don't allow elbows and knees to the head. But no shin pads, 5-minute rounds, weight cutting, just like what pros would do. And guess what? The two number one countries in the world, and Brazil, sorry, Brazil do the same thing. The three number one countries in the world for developing fighters: Russia, United States, Brazil. Those are the three number one countries, right? And so why not see what they're doing and let's try to get it right. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you on the next episode. Peace out.